Nobody prepares you for this moment. You've spent 30 years in the nonprofit sector, maybe more. You've built programs, rescued organizations, navigated impossible situations, mentored dozens of leaders. You've learned things that can't be taught in graduate programs, things that only come from being there, from living it, from failing forward through crisis after crisis until you finally figured out what actually works. You carry decades of pattern recognition. You can walk into a struggling organization and see the real problem in 20 minutes. You know which board dynamics will destroy a nonprofit, and which ones can be redirected. You understand how to navigate funder politics, staff conflict, mission drift, budget crises, and leadership transitions. Not because someone taught you, because you survived them. Multiple times. And now, you're retiring, or stepping back, or transitioning to the next chapter. Whatever language people use to make it sound like a choice, everyone throws you a party. They give speeches about your impact. Someone presents a plaque. There's cake. People hug you and say, "We'll miss you. You've been such a gift to this organization. Your wisdom is irreplaceable." And you smile. You thank them. You mean it. But inside, something feels unfinished. Because you're walking away with something nobody's talking about. 30 years of lived experience. Thousands of judgment calls that never got documented. Crisis navigation systems you built instinctively. Leadership wisdom that lives only in your bones. And in 6 months, it's all going to disappear. Poof! The organization will hire someone new, someone smart, someone capable. But they won't know what you know. They'll make the same mistakes you made in your first 5 years. They'll misread board dynamics you learned to navigate seamlessly. They'll approach funders the wrong way, the way that feels right, but always backfires. They'll restructure systems you already restructured and learned why it doesn't work that way. And nobody will remember that you already solved these problems, because you never wrote it down. You never captured it. You never turned 30 years of wisdom into something transferable. So it's just gone. That's the retiree's invisible legacy problem. Your expertise doesn't retire when you do. It just evaporates. And here's what nobody tells you about retirement from the nonprofit sector. 6 months in, you're restless. You thought you'd enjoy the freedom, the travel, the hobbies, the slower pace. And you do. For about 8 weeks. Then someone calls. A former colleague, a struggling organization, a board member who's stuck. "Can I pick your brain for 20 minutes? And you say yes. Because of course you do. The conversation happens. You listen to their problem, and within 10 minutes, you've identified the real issue, suggested 3 pathways forward, and helped them see something they couldn't see before. They're grateful, relieved. They thank you profusely. And after you hang up, you feel alive again, because you just did in 20 minutes what someone else couldn't figure out in 6 months. Not because you're smarter, because you've been there before. 17 times. You have patterns, systems, frameworks. You just never named them. And now they're locked inside you, with no clear path to share them. You're not ready to go back to full-time work. But you're also not ready to let 30 years of hard-won wisdom just disappear. You want to contribute. You want to stay relevant. You want to generate meaningful income without the burden of full-time leadership. And you want to know that what you learned, really learned, through failure and recovery and growth, doesn't vanish the moment you step away. Now, imagine something different happened. 3 months before you retired, someone said, "Let's capture your system." And you thought, "What system? I just know how things work." but they insisted. So one afternoon, you sit down. Someone starts the recording. The red circle glows, and suddenly, the conversation shifts. You start explaining things you usually just do. Someone asks, "How do you know when a board conflict is real versus performative?" And instead of, "I just sense it," you hear yourself say, "I watch who speaks to whom before the meeting. I notice whether the conflict surfaces in executive session or only in public. I pay attention to whether people are solving for outcomes or positioning for power. Real conflicts have solutions. Performative conflicts have audiences. Once I identify which type it is, I know exactly how to handle it." You didn't know you had a system, but you do. Someone asks, "How do you decide when to push back on a funder versus accept their restrictions?" And you realize, I assess 3 things: mission alignment, relationship history, and alternative funding options. If it compromises mission, and I have alternatives, I push back respectfully. If it's mission aligned but annoying, I accept it. If it's mission compromising and I have no alternatives, I negotiate boundaries. The decision matrix is clear. I just never wrote it down. You've been following this framework for 20 years. You just never articulated it. Later, the audio gets transcribed. AI analyzes it, and something remarkable happens. It extracts the patterns you didn't know you were using. It identifies your decision-making frameworks. It captures your crisis navigation system. It reveals your leadership wisdom architecture. It even names the invisible expertise you've been carrying for decades. It turns lived experience into teachable methodology. And then, poof, the genie appears. The wisdom that used to evaporate with retirement becomes something real, something you can see, share, teach, monetize. Now, you don't just give advice. You offer frameworks. Your board dynamics navigation system that identifies power plays versus genuine concerns knows when to intervene and when to wait, and turns resistance into productive dialogue. Your funder relationship framework that shows when to accept restrictions, when to negotiate boundaries, and when to walk away, with the relationship intact. Your crisis decision model that distinguishes urgent from important, protects what matters most, and maintains team morale when everything's burning. Your leadership transition process that captures institutional knowledge, prepares successors effectively, and ensures continuity during change. Your mission protection filter that evaluates opportunities against core values, prevents drift without limiting growth, and keeps organizations focused on impact. 6 months into retirement? You're not sitting by the phone hoping someone calls. You're teaching workshops. 3 organizations licensed your board dynamics navigation system for their governance training programs. You're earning $4,000 a month working 10 hours a week. You're consulting on your terms, the challenging projects that energize you, not the administrative burdens that drained you. A former colleague calls, "We're designing a leadership development program. Can we use your frameworks?" You say yes. Now your wisdom is teaching people you'll never meet, in organizations you'll never visit, long after you've fully retired. Another organization asks if you'll train their incoming executive director using your leadership transition process. 8 sessions, premium pricing, high impact. You're not trying to replace full-time income, but you're generating meaningful revenue doing work that matters, without the 60-hour weeks. And the best part? Your legacy isn't trapped in people's memories. It's documented, named, teachable. It exists independent of you. Wisdom captured becomes wisdom codified, becomes wisdom shared. Retirees don't need to keep working full-time. You've already earned your rest. You just need a way to capture what you know, codify what you've learned, and share what took decades to build. That's how we transform retirement from stepping away into expanding impact. That's how we turn invisible expertise into legacy frameworks that outlive your tenure. That's how we ensure that 30 years of hard-won wisdom doesn't just poof, disappear when you leave. We call it your Wisdom Genie, and once you experience it, you can't go back to a world where decades of nonprofit leadership wisdom simply vanishes at retirement. This is exactly what happens in the unique training we call Sell Your System, Framework Design in 48 Hours. Sign up today at nonprofitworld.us. You sit down with your lived experience. Someone starts the video. Actually, Zoom does the recording for you. And you learn to capture, codify, and share in just 2 90-minute sessions. The framework already exists inside experienced nonprofit leaders like you. You're just hitting the red button before decades of wisdom disappear. This training is perfect for nonprofit retirees, those planning transitions, and anyone who refuses to let their hard-won expertise evaporate when they step away from full-time work. Your system exists. Let's capture it before it vanishes. Learn more at nonprofitworld.us.